So, yeah, I'm going to try out something a little bit different, and it kind of depends on the Wi-Fi working. It's been a bit of a nightmare. It's probably a stupid idea, so let's find out. We're going to do like an interactive quiz. These slides are going to be interactive, so if you don't have a web-enabled device kind of in front of you now, get it in front of you. You know, a laptop or a phone, it will work on both, but make sure you've got that ready. I mean, it's a quiz, but it's really just an excuse to string together some bits of browser trivia related to performance stuff. So what you'll need to do is get on the Google Guest Wi-Fi. That's the SSID there. And then if you go to this lovely URL, which is my laptop here, so that's 192.168.156.69 port 3000, and there's a clue. Yes, it's a node server. Fair enough. Yeah, if you're watching the live stream, nah, that's not going to work. Sorry, just play the game using your mind or whatever. Just play with yourself. No, wait, no, it doesn't matter. Okay, move on. Once you go to this URL, you'll be asked to enter a username and password. Just make up any old password. It's going to be stored in plain text on my machine, so don't use your credit card number unless you wish to make a donation. All donations are gratefully received. The reason I'm asking for a password is if you want to switch devices halfway through, like you start running out of batteries or whatever, you can just enter the username and password again on another device and pick up from where you left off. Now, I hacked this thing together quite quickly. You could probably break it by trying to break it, so please don't do that. You know, I've at least made sure little Bobby tables can play, so if you're in the room, you're all right. Is everyone getting access to it? Is it kind of working? Wow, brilliant. I want to stress that this quiz is tough, and I've seen it catch out people who do this sort of stuff, this minor details of browsers for a living, and it catches them out. So if you're the kind of person who like flips tables over when you don't win, then maybe stay away from tables for a little bit, because this could get rough. Okay, I'm going to get this huge, horrible Helvetica off the screen. Oh, of course, what kind of quiz would be complete without a grand prize? The Chromebook Pixel is Google's latest laptop featuring an i5 1.8 GHz processor, 4 GB of RAM, and a touchscreen with a higher DPI than a MacBook Pro. Couldn't get hold of one of those, sorry, they wouldn't give me one. Never mind. But if you do win, then we will swag you. We will swag you good. You are quite dazzled by that. I thought you might not, so I thought I'd go all in and like, yeah, look at that stuff, a neon thing, a glass. Have you seen one of those before? And a cub, brilliant. Okay, the lens flares are sold separately. Sorry about that. Let's get started. We're going to start off really simple, like images in HTML, right? You've done that before. Fair enough. Okay. Here is a div. The div has a source, like an image might. Which browsers do you think are going to make a request for that? Now, on your phones and your laptops at the moment, it should have given you the options for this question. If it hasn't, just hit refresh, and you should get them. Now, when we're talking about these browsers, we're talking about the latest version of them, the latest stable release. You get 1 point for each one you get right, and you will lose a point for each one you get wrong. So if you say Firefox doesn't make a request, and it does, you will lose a point there. You can assume the HTML5 doc type, and there's nothing funky in the head like a base tag that might throw things off. There's no trickery going on. And what we're seeing here is a live readout of the opinion of the room. So the needle will swing one way when you think yes, it will swing the other way when you think no. Although the direction is randomized for each question, so you cannot just vote along with the room. You will be probably getting it wrong if you do that. Right, okay, that's probably enough time. If you haven't answered yet, answer quickly, because I'm going to close the question in 3, 2, 1. And okay, so the needle's kind of going roughly in the middle, which means collectively you don't have a clue. Well done, everyone. You're kind of thinking yes in, well, most of the browsers, kind of more strongly in Internet Explorer. It's almost like you've been bitten by that browser in the past. The answer is, of course, no. Not in any of the browsers. Not that I'm going to do that. Well done, the people who got it right. 4 people by the sounds of things. Excellent, well done. But this is not as mad as it seems. So in XHTML2, you could do this. You could have any element, like such as a div, with a source, and the browser would replace that element with the content of that resource. And it was kind of a good idea, or it was the start of a good idea, because you could take rich semantic content and replace it with an image. It made the alt attribute completely redundant. Pretty cool, but XHTML2 had the backwards incompatibility issues, and it carried with it XML's draconian error handling. And once you invite XML into your home, it XMLs everything. It XMLs all over the carpet, up the walls. And in the same way that Smurfs stick the word Smurf in front of everything to make it a Smurf thing, XML sticks X at the start of everything. Now, you don't want HTML, you want XHTML. You don't want frames, you want X frames. You don't want forms, you can have X forms. If you let XML take over your life, it will turn your boyfriend or girlfriend into an ex-boyfriend or girlfriend. And XML cool with that, because you don't need a partner, because you've got XML to look after you now. It seems fitting that in 2009, XHTML2 became an X specification, and we didn't care about it anymore. And no browsers ever implemented source on something like a div. But what about this? We've got an image element, it's got a source. Which browser is going to make a request? Now, notice that I have spelled image incorrectly in terms of HTML. Does the browser treat this like an unknown element, or does it do something special? I mean, we saw XML was too draconian, too strict for the web, but is HTML this lenient, or are the browsers more lenient than the spec in this case? So we're seeing you're kind of leaning towards one way. In pretty much all the browsers, you're changing your mind, going back into the middle. We're going to keep this rolling quickly, so just make a decision. I'm going to close the question in 3, 2, 1, and it's closed. So you're kind of thinking pretty much yes in all the browsers, and you would be absolutely correct. In all of them, it will make a request for the image. And note in these situations, it doesn't have to show the image. We're just talking about making a request. But in this case, all of the browsers will actually show the image as well. You see, back in the past, I don't know if you remember the past, but one browser decided that IMG was too difficult for developers to remember, and that image should work as well. And we've been stuck with that ever since. Now, which browser vendor do you think we have to blame for this? Oh yes, of course, it is Mosaic. Back in 1993, the people who invented the image tag, they did this, and a study in 2005 showed that like 0.2% of pages were using this incorrectly spelled image, so all the browsers have to support it for pretty much forevermore. The WhatWG recognized this and added it to the spec. This is the parsing spec, and you can see there, start tag, if it's image, change the token name to IMG and reprocess it, don't ask. Right. But recently, IMAGE was using a clever hack. Alexi 10 came up with this. So you would use this on your page instead of an image. This block of sort of SVG with an image inside it. And what it'll do is it'll show an SVG in browsers that support SVG, and it will do a PNG in other browsers. So a modern browser will parse it like this. Okay, that's an SVG element. Okay, it's going to be 100 by 100. That's fine. Oh, and this is an SVG image, because in SVG, image elements are spelled fully, IMAGE. Oh, it's got a width and a height. That's great. And I'm going to load img.svg, because this is how you define the source for an image in SVG, because it's part of XML. And why have a link when you can have an X link? And then it sees this and it goes, that means absolutely nothing to SVG images, so I'm going to ignore it. Whereas an older browser, maybe as the Android 2, IE8, they'll parse it like this. I'm going to ignore that. Oh, look, the developer spelled image wrong. OK, I am going to use that. It's 100 by 100. Whoa! Developer got high. I'm going to ignore that, and I'm going to load img.png. It's great. So you've got this doesn't require JavaScript, and you're switching between the two image formats. And we got kind of excited about it, and we started tweeting about it. The mistake we made is we didn't test it. So a few of us started testing it, and we found something interesting. All of these browsers support SVG. Which ones download both images? They shouldn't, and I'll give you a clue. It doesn't go one way or the other for all browsers. Some of the browsers are doing it differently, so you're going to have to pick the browser or browsers that you think get this wrong, because not all of them get it wrong. I'm going to close the question. Oh, oh dear. Oh, no, OK. There's some IE fans in the room. Closing the question in 3, 2, 1. OK, so you're edging towards Internet Explorer being the bad guy here, and in this case, you are correct. As a kind of group, you're doing quite well. You should all form a company or something. It's great. So all the browsers here, all the latest versions, they have 2 parsers inside. A relatively new thing for browsers to have, but these ones, they all have it. One parser runs ahead as quickly as it can and picks up things that it should download, like images, scripts, all of that sort of stuff. The other parser does the heavy lifting, like building the DOM tree and parsing scripts and all that stuff. This has a surprisingly large benefit. Ilya is posting about this study that was done through 2,000 sites, and it had a 20% speed improvement. That's pretty incredible. That's time to get to DOM content loaded. In order to be quick, this other pre-parser, this first one, is a little bit stupid. In Internet Explorer, it's that little bit too stupid. And it kind of gets overexcited, and it's like, I'm going to show a PNG, I'm going to show a PNG, yep, here I go, I'm going to show the PNG, here it goes. Nah, actually, no, it's an SVG, never mind, fair enough. It kind of sees the image, but it misses the SVG context, so it picks up the wrong source. And then the main parser comes along and goes, what are you doing? No, this is an SVG thing, and downloads the correct thing. The moral here is don't just, if there's some kind of performance advice going on, don't just blindly trust it. In Chrome, we say, use tools, not rules, and it rhymes, so it must be true, right? But also be on the lookout for existing tests. If someone's done the legwork for you, and you can just sort of run that test yourself. One of my favorite stories in science involves this guy, August Weismann. He wanted to disprove that evolution was learned. Like if you had some kind of life experience, that would be passed to your children. He wanted to disprove that was a thing, because it wasn't the Darwin evolution. So he took some mice, and he cut their tails off, and he bred them together. And then the next generation, he cut their tails off and bred them together as well. And the theory was, well, if evolution is learned, we're going to start getting mice born without tails. And he was quite a way into this research until someone went, you do realize, August, that the Jewish people have been carrying out this test a lot longer than you have. And I was like, oh yeah, fair enough, yeah, okay, job done. So yeah, don't reinvent the wheel unless you want to learn a lot about wheels, and that can be cool sometime. Okay, what about this? I've got an image. It's inside a div that's displaying none. This image is not going to be displayed, but which browsers are going to request the URL and download the image regardless? So, yeah, I do it quickly. We're going to go for, we're still thinking IE is going to do something different. People are thinking Firefox is going to do something different. I'm going to close the question in 3, 2, 1. There we go. The countdown's going to get old, but I'm going to do it for every question anyway. OK, so we're sort of saying yes in IE, maybe no in Safari, no in Chrome, and maybe in Firefox. The answer is yes in all of them. They are all going to download the image in this case. And this behavior is part of the specification as well. In the beginning, there is nothing, right? And then the browser gets sprayed with HTML text. And then from that, it's going to construct this tree of elements that, as Paul was explaining earlier, is the DOM. When one of these things is constructed, the constructor steps for that element are run. And if we look at the spec for image, it's quite complicated for what you'd think would be a very simple thing. But this is the image stuff. It all runs synchronously. Step 14, fetch the image. No mention of CSS, no mention of anything like that. And that's good in some ways, because it means the browser can start the image downloading before the CSS is there. The pre-parser can deal with it. Downside is, well, we couldn't do polyfills for things like responsive images because by the time JavaScript gets there to do something clever, the image has already started downloading, and you're just going to trigger a second request by changing the source. This won't be a problem in the future. The resources priority spec has this postpone attribute, which means the image won't download if it's displayed none. And it allows the browser to avoid downloading it even if it's just out of view on the page as well. So you don't have to rely on these heavy scroll events for image lazy loading. OK, what if we're using CSS? Does visibility matter then? What about this? Once again, that image is not going to be displayed because it's inside an element that is display none. So we saw here that the image would download in this case. But what about in CSS? Is it going to do something different? Does visibility matter here? Which some of the browsers are going to do something different? I'm going to close the question in 3, 2, going right to the middle. Collectively, once again, no clue. Don't worry about it, guys. It's quite difficult. What's the answer? None of the browsers will make a request here. And that's kind of cool, right? We want to be able to rely on that kind of behavior. Slightly different one. What about now? Same thing again. The image is not going to be rendered because it's on a display non-element. But it's not inside a display non-element. It is on a display non-element. So we saw it was the browsers weren't downloading before. What about now? Did the browsers do something different? Did they all download it? Did they all not download it? I mean, they don't need it. It's not going to be rendered. I'm going to close the question in 3, 2, 1, done. All right, we're saying no in pretty much every browser. Most browsers will download it in this case. Only Firefox won't. So what's going on here? Well, once you've got some DOM elements on the page, as Paul was explaining before, they're going to get their styles calculated, where the browser goes to see which, of your cascaded styles, of your font tags if you're from the 90s, which styles apply to each element individually. But not everything gets its style calculated. So we've got these two elements at the bottom, no style calculation. And the reason is this div at the top here turned out to be display none. And the browser shortcuts, because it knows the styles of these elements have no impact on the rendering of the page, so it doesn't bother. It takes a shortcut. So if these have background images, the browser never finds out about it. If the display none element has a background image, the browser does find out about it, and that's why we see most browsers downloading it at that point. Firefox is a little bit smarter here, but if you use something like visibility hidden or opacity 0, Firefox will be downloading as well. Who's getting it right according to the specification? Everyone is. It's great. The specification says absolutely nothing about this. There's this tiny note that says the browser may optimize. It may avoid downloading images that are out of view, even if it's like there's another element over the top. The browser may avoid downloading at this point. No browsers are that smart yet. This kind of freedom in the specifications is great because it means the browser can do what's right given the situation and the kind of device and the network connectivity, et cetera, et cetera. But it's also kind of scary because this is where you're going to get the browsers doing different things, as we saw here. But I kind of like that. I think that's the diversity that makes the web great. It's not one company driving forward with its own interests. It's lots of companies driving forward in different directions. And we get this sort of car crash, but a car crash with a happy ending. And that's the web that we have today. So if you want to avoid downloading backgrounds in CSS, hiding the element isn't enough. You need to put it inside something that is hidden, so the browser won't even look at that element. But when you do that, realize you are relying on just what the browsers do. It is not specs behavior. The only surefire way is don't let the browser find out about the background image. Take the class off until you need it, or don't put the element in the DOM until you need it. All right, things have been quite easy so far. Let's get JavaScript involved. What do you think? Creating an image element, once again, I've spelled image wrong. I'm applying a source to it. It is not in the document, so it's not going to be displayed yet, and it's spelled wrong. We saw the browsers correcting for that before, but that was in HTML. What about in the DOM? Is it going to be different? I'm going to close the question in 3, 2, 1. Right, done. OK, so we're kind of edging towards yes in most browsers. It is yes in most browsers, except Firefox. Firefox does something different here. And there are two parts to this explanation. We saw before that the DOM builds up and these creation steps for elements are run. But even if you create the element and it's not part of a document, that's still going to run those creation steps. And we saw before, step 14, fetch the image. We can use this to our advantage, because you can make a GET request to any URL by making an image element and assigning a source. And you could use the image element constructor. It's a tiny bit of code. You can make a request anywhere. This is kind of how Google Analytics communicates back to the server. Oh yeah, but Firefox didn't make a request. So what's going on there? It's because we spelled image wrong. And most browsers, Chrome, Safari, IE, will give us an HTML image element when we do that. Firefox will give us an HTML element. It's not an image. You add it to the page, it will not show an image. And you know what? It's the only one getting it right. We saw before that the specification says if you encounter a start tag, you can correct it. But this is the parsing spec. We bypass the parsing spec by creating the element in JavaScript. So yeah, actually, technically, it should have returned an HTML unknown element. But it's getting it closer to right than the other browsers. I think I kind of preferred it when the web, with all the browsers, like there was one bad guy and all the other browsers seemed perfect. It was like an orchestra, and Internet Explorer 8 was just this screaming child hitting two cymbals together. But then we finally got rid of the screaming child of the cymbal, and then we started conducting again, and we went, oh, actually, everyone's out of tune. We just didn't notice because of the screaming cymbal child. Oh, fair enough. All right, let's get CSS involved again. What about this? So, as before, creating a div, I'm going to give it a background image. So I'm not creating an image, creating a div, giving it a background image. We saw here that images were downloaded at this point. Is it different with CSS? Do different browsers do different stuff? So we're kind of edging towards the don't know. Oh, wow, it sort of swung the other way. Closing the question in 3, 2, 1. All right, so we're edging towards yes in everything. Wrong uns, the lot of you. No browser will download here. And this is kind of the same as the display none case. It's not in the document, so the browser's not going to go looking for the styles, because it doesn't need to know the style information, because it knows it's not going to render. All right, going to be cruel. Same thing, but I'm going to add it to the DOM, and then I'm going to take it away. In the same block of JavaScript, will the browser see that element in the document long enough to actually trigger the download? What do you think? I'm going to close the question in 3, 2, 1. We're edging towards yes in everything. Wrong again. None of the browsers. None of them. The browser doesn't think about styles or layout until as late as possible, which normally means when it needs to render something. And this isn't going to change any pixels, because JavaScript's going to be blocking the chance to do some of that painting stuff. What about this? I'm adding it to the document. I'm going to ask for its text content. It's an empty element. Text content is going to be empty as well. And then I'm going to remove it again. Does that trigger different behavior in the browser? Element's completely empty, so, But is that going to trigger the browser to go, oh, yeah, I'm actually going to get that background image? I'm going to close the question in 3, 2, 1. What have you said? You don't know. Fair enough. Yes, it's tricky. No. None of the browsers at this point. I am going somewhere with this, I promise you. Getting the text content of an element is pretty easy. It's just going to go and pick up the text nodes. Doesn't need to look at the style or anything. What about this one, inner HTML? Same as before, but instead of text content, going to ask for the old inner HTML. Oh, wow, IE's doing something different to everyone else. Interesting. I'm going to close the question in 3, 2, 1. All right, so you've said yes in IE and no in everything else. Bloody hell, you're right. Well done. Yeah, IE makes a request. And the reason for that is because, I don't know. Some things in the world cannot be explained, like why it takes 3 attempts to plug in a USB cable, even though there's only 2 possibilities. These things just cannot be explained. Moving on. Similar again, instead of inner HTML, it's inner text. What do the browsers do here? Do they do something different? We saw IE is quite request happy with inner HTML. Does it do something different with inner text? Does it trigger requests in any of the other browsers? I promise you, I am going somewhere with this. Closing the question in 3, 2, 1. There's quite a strong opinion of no across all the browsers. Sorry, guys. Yes, in everything except Firefox. And this actually makes sense. Let's make a div. We make a div. We give it a background image. I'm going to give it inner HTML, where it's got hello world, and the div is a div around the world, or whatever. Text content is hello world, as you might expect. The inner text has a line break in it. And this is how it is in IE, Chrome, and Safari. Because inner text is more like what you would get if you copy and pasted the element, the text of the element. And because div is a block level element, or it certainly is in this example, it gets a new line. So if we run this, the browser goes, yeah, text content, easy enough. Inner text, inner text is style dependent. So I'm going to have a look at the styles of the element. And it's got a background image. That's interesting. I'll download that. And that's why we see most browsers doing it. Firefox doesn't download at this point because it doesn't support inner text. It's the only browser that doesn't, so it just returns undefined at that point. But if you used any of these, apart from inner text, like anything that's going to get some style data from the page, Firefox would have started the download as well. So Paul was talking about this earlier. You can start doing layout thrashing if you start doing these reads and writes. So you'll trigger extra layouts, etc. The browser is quite clever about this stuff. It will batch changes together. I mean, if you do this, like display non-block, etc., loads of widths, this is actually a really light piece of code. It's not tricky for the browser to understand because it's going to ignore. All right. I hope that's not my cue to get off because that's very passive aggressive. Anyway. So it'll only take the last change that you make. Oh, that's nice. This is great, but it can lead to unexpected results. Let's have a look at a practical example. Paul and we want to go over there. You can tell because we're pointing. Let's do it with code. I'm going to start at left 0. I'm going to transition left 1 second, go to 100%. We run that code, and it works. Yay, we solved the world's problems with code. Now, we're very happy at this point, but let's run the code again. Nothing happened. And this is because the browser is going to ignore this first right of left. It's just going to batch them together. It's only going to listen to our last right here. And it's 100%. We're at 100% already, so nothing happens. We can fix this by forcing a synchronous layout here, because that forces the browser to go and look at all the styles of all the elements on the page, and it realizes, oh, yeah, we are supposed to be at left 0. So when we make the next changes, it will start from 0. If we can run this code as many times as we want, and it works. You might have encountered this kind of behavior and tried to use set timeout or something to get around it. No, you can just force a layout like this. Right, OK, last question. Let's get through this quickly, because I'm going to be chucked off the stage in a few seconds. Imagine a page full of lorem ipsum. It looks like this, 595 pixels across. Media query, min width 600. Min width, so we wouldn't really be expecting it to display. Which browsers are going to download that GIF anyway? Are the browsers going to do something different? And you say, would we expect it to even display that GIF? Who knows? Last question, so make it a good one. Closing it in 3, 2, 1, straight down the middle. I feel like I've broken you as an audience. I'm very sorry. What happens here? IE and Firefox will download, and they will actually display the background as well. And this is quite sneaky. My measurement did not include the scroll bar. With the scroll bar, it brings it over 600 pixels. Now, they don't call me Cunning Jake. They don't actually call me Cunning Jake. Yeah, fair enough. This seems insane to me, to include the scroll bar width. What if the user has a 200 pixel scroll bar? Why should I care about that? But including the scroll bar is mandated by the specification. It's interesting. And Chrome and Safari are breaking the spec here. It's fixed in the Chrome nightlies. It's not fixed in the WebKit nightlies. Why is the scroll bar included? Well, imagine this bit of code. I'm forcing no scroll bar, and then when the width gets to 600, I'm going to introduce a scroll bar. 500 pixels, that's fine. We get to 601. We need to put a scroll bar in. Oh, now we're less than 600 pixels, we'll take it away. And so on, and so on, and so on. In reality, it doesn't get stuck in a loop, but here we can see what Safari does. I've got a background picture and a scroll bar coming in at a particular width, and we'll see as I'm only making it bigger. I'm not moving both ways, and we can see that the background image flickers on and off, and then once we get beyond the width of the scroll bar, it stabilizes, and that's it. Let's have a look at the rankings. Don't worry if you haven't scored, great. It won't actually show your name on the screen. It's only going to show the top 10, so don't worry too much. Who have we got? Pretty fly for a Wi-Fi. Very good. Who's that? Excellent. Right. I will swag you good and proper. Oh, God, you've done really, really well. OK, that's my time up. Thank you very much, guys. Cheers. Bye.